What's up everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we are looking at why doesn't the US know about its own Dutch origins? That is, I don't know why they don't know, so let's watch this video guys, figure it out together. Don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe, and let's get on with it, see what we got to learn.
Months ago, I made a video on why I thought the Dutch had an underestimated impact on American history, and the defining characteristics and values of the country today. This was done primarily through the Dutch colony of New Netherland, and its settlement of New Amsterdam that served as the seat of the colonial government. This video is kind of part 2 to that one, so if you haven't watched that video yet, I've left a link in the description below.
We haven't watched that
Most
one.
Americans know little more about their Dutch past, other than that the Dutch once occupied Manhattan, and the legend that Peter Minuit bought Manhattan from the natives for $24 worth of household goods or seashells.
What?
But even that story has its issues. The details surrounding the story suggest inaccuracies, questionable sources, and at a minimum, a misunderstanding between the parties involved. So that's the theme of this video. Why is the US left with this one story, and a sketchy one at that? Why doesn't the United States know about its own Dutch origins? But before I get too far into it, first, I want to share a little part of my life outside of YouTube. One of my hobbies before YouTube was creating decorative maps of my favorite places. So
Wow,
back in the summer of
that's a
2018,
skill, you
I
know.
started an online map shop called Zach's Map Shop. Like my videos, they can be a bit random. A large portion of the maps are American national parks, but I'm slowly widening the range of maps available. I also sell historical prints now, not just my original designs. Most of my products are maps printed on high quality poster paper, but I also sell other items such as stickers, notebooks, and coffee cups. With Christmas just months away, if you're looking for something unique for a family member or friend, or
Okay, so this guy has a skill, he's selling some stuff as
you're
well.
like me,
Why
shade
not?
any Etsy, the United States
Okay,
isn't
let's get
ignorant
it.
of its Dutch past because it chose to be, but its main former colonizer, the British, probably were. The United States just inherited the ignorance. The Netherlands and Britain had a long-lasting rivalry over dominance of global trade. 4 wars occurred between England and later Great Britain in the 17th and 18th centuries, with the last coinciding with the American Revolution. In 1664, New Netherland and its seat of government, New Amsterdam, was taken from the Dutch by the English. And though the Dutch are generally considered to have won the war that immediately followed, the Second Anglo-Dutch War, the Dutch didn't push for New Amsterdam's return. They were satisfied with keeping what was thought to be a more valuable and formerly British colony, the newly seized Suriname. New Netherland and its
Okay.
seat of government, New Amsterdam, were changed to the province of New York and New York City by the British, and it would stay in their hands for over a century. The region's history was essentially
Wow, like this sort of history stuff, I've never actually heard it before, so it's all everything is brand new to me here.
reset.
So
An
bear with
excerpt
me,
from a
guys.
journal belonging to an 18th century Virginia gentleman named William Byrd II, I believe displays this English attitude and bias against the Dutch. He wrote this in 1728, as he and a party of surveyors drew the border between the colonies of Virginia and North Carolina. Another limb lopped off from Virginia was New York, which the Dutch seized very unfairly, on pretense of having purchased it from Captain Hudson, the first discoverer. Nor was their way of taking possession of it a whit more justifiable than their pretended title. Their West India Company tampered with some worthy English skippers, who had contracted with a swarm of English dissenters to transport them to Hudson River.
Oh, those are awesome, weird windows. Look at that. They have a like a balcony. There's like the doors that close. Okay, that is weird. Never seen something like that before.
By no means to land them there, but to carry them some leagues more northerly. This Dutch finesse took exactly, and gave the company time soon after to seize Hudson River for themselves. But Sir Samuel Argall, then governor of Virginia, understanding how the king's subjects had been abused by these Republicans, marched thither with a good force, and obliged them to renounce all pretensions to that country. The worst of it was, the knight depended on their parole to ship themselves for Brazil, but took no measures to make this slippery people as good as their word.
Wow.
No sooner was the good governor retired, but the honest Dutch began to build forts and strengthen themselves in their ill-gotten possessions. Nor did any of the king's liege people take the trouble to drive these intruders thence. The Civil War in England and the confusions it brought forth allowed no leisure for such distant considerations, though it is strange that the Protector, who neglected no occasion to mortify the Dutch, did not afterwards call them to account for this breach of faith. However, after the Restoration, the king sent a squadron of his ships of war under the command of Sir Robert Carr, and reduced that province to his obedience. Some time after, his Majesty was pleased to grant that country to his
Wow,
Royal
man.
Highness, the Duke of York, by letters patent dated March the 12th, 1664. But to show the modesty of the Dutch to the life, though they had no shadow of right to New York, yet they demanded Suriname, a more valuable country, as an equivalent for it, and our able ministers at the time had the generosity to give it them. Looking at this excerpt, it appears not just New Netherland, but really anything considered a Dutch success was probably suppressed. This includes the Second and Third Anglo-Dutch Wars, which played significant roles in American history, but are
Wow.
rarely talked about. In 1667, the Netherlands attacked my home state of Virginia at the mouth of the James River as part of the Second Anglo-Dutch War. I've lived in Virginia my entire life, and didn't know this until a few weeks ago when a friend of mine told me that while doing some genealogical research, discovered that one of his ancestors had been killed by a cannonball during the conflict.
By
The fleet that attacked
cannonball.
Virginia was led by
Damn.
Abraham Cranston, the same admiral who just months earlier had taken the British colony of Suriname. The Dutch returned to attack at Hampton Roads in the Third Anglo-Dutch War as well. But colonists slowly stopped identifying as Englishmen, and resentment towards the British eventually grew. Independence was
Okay.
declared in 1776 and officially achieved in 1783, which the Dutch actually helped the US achieve. I made a video about this as well. At this point, Americans, having a shared resentment of the British, would have probably been more open to accepting their Dutch history. But after over a century of being a British colony, the Americans naturally inherited the history that was taught, and the most commonly spoken and written language was English, making it difficult to read anything from a Dutch
Yep.
perspective. And English remained by far the most common language in the following 2 centuries
That is true.
after gaining independence.
That is true.
Even though today, citizens with a majority English ancestry may make up as little as 7.8% of the US population. On top of this, the Dutch language had evolved over those 2 centuries of English rule, adding another barrier to reading historic documents left by New Netherland. New Netherland left behind 12,000 pages of letters, deeds, wills, journal entries, council minutes, and court proceedings, but no one knew what they said. In 1801, a committee headed by, who would later be U.S. Vice President to Thomas Jefferson, Aaron Burr, declared that measures ought to be taken to procure a translation, but none were. In the 1820s, a half-blind Dutchman who was not very proficient in English translated the documents, though it was poorly done. Nevertheless, a 1911 fire destroyed the New York State Library along with his translation. In the early 20th century, a highly skilled translator undertook the task, but after 2 years of dedication, his translation also burned up in the same fire, after which he abandoned
That's
the
just
task.
horrible, man.
Finally, in 1974, a man named Charles Gehring began translating the documents. Later, a woman named Yanni Venema joined him, and together have
Okay.
translated over 7,000 of the 12,000 original documents,
What?
revealing the lives of New Netherlands inhabitants
That
and
is
the impact they
insane.
had on what would become New York and the United States. On a
Bro.
side note, I think this highlights how difficult it can be to be unbiased when you are limited to sources in one language, and it's something I struggle with on this channel. Essays, journals, and books have been written in the last few decades based on these translations. Several of my videos, including this one, took a lot of information from Russell Shorto's The Island at the Center of the World, which I highly recommend. But this is still relatively new information, so it hasn't quite made it into many states' school curriculum. Take a look at my home state of Virginia. This is from a high school class called U.S. History to 1865. Only the English colonies are mentioned, leaving an entire geographic gap as if New York didn't exist. And only the Spanish, French, and English are mentioned as exploring North America.
Damn, bro.
The Dutch are mentioned once in the Virginia U.S. History class, but it just vaguely states that Dutch-speaking immigrants came to the area. Above that, it falsely states that the Puritans were seeking freedom from religious persecution in Europe, though they already had religious freedom in the Netherlands before coming to the colonies. It then goes on to state that the middle colonies were home to multiple religious groups who generally believed in religious tolerance, including Quakers in Pennsylvania, Huguenots, and Jews in New York. Yes, there were Jews that came to New York, but only because of New Amsterdam and the tolerance that came with being a Dutch colony, though Peter Stuyvesant wasn't a fan. The one state that does appear to recognize the role that the Dutch have played in American history is, of course, New York, especially in more recent times. In 1915, New York City adopted a flag influenced by the flag of the Dutch Republic and used in New Amsterdam. The seal at its center has an image of a windmill. 3 windmills had been built in New Amsterdam. There is also a beaver, the trade of which was one of the main reasons for the Dutch colonization of the
Beaver
region.
as well.
In
Interesting.
1977, New York City changed the year on its seal from 1664, the year the English took New Amsterdam, to 1625, the year that New Amsterdam was designated the seat of government for New Netherland. New York State has a 7th grade class called New York U.S. History that emphasizes the influence the Dutch had on New York and the United States as a whole. And maybe
Wow,
just
man.
like culture always has in the U.S., this will eventually spread outward from New York across the entire United States. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the
Wow. I was actually trying to really focus on this because my history is kind of bad, to be honest. So that's why we're watching to learn. But that was quite interesting, I would say. So, yeah. Interesting video. Let me know your thoughts, guys, in the comments below. If you've got any video recommendations, drop it down in the comments and I'll check it out. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you on the next video. Peace out.